Hello, folks, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Moose Hunt Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Richards, and I'm so excited today that we're going to be bringing you an in-depth conversation around a very essential topic to the success of your moose hunt, scouting. We're going to be sitting around with our team member and professional Maine guide, Mr. Tom Hamilton, as he unpacks his recommendations for if he were heading to a new area, how he'd begin scouting, and the type of areas he'd be looking for heading into unknown territory. We're also going to hear Tom as he discusses a bit of his background getting into the outdoors, and then cap off the episode with a really exciting story about one of the OMM Outfitters Hall of Fame bulls, a bull we call the Horseshoe Bull. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy. All right, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Moose Hunt Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Richards. Very excited today, coming to you from beautiful Eagle Lake, Maine. And right now we're sitting down with our dear friend, team member, colleague, Mr. Tom Hamilton. Tom, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Chris. Happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. And we're going to be getting into a lot of information today, some on Tom's background. We're going to discuss, really hear from Tommy, and as he talks about methods he'd use for scouting. So, certainly people getting ready if you're going to do your own moose hunt. Particularly if it's in northern Maine, you're going to a region you've never been before. How would you go about starting that process? And we're going to get suggestions and recommendations from Tom on how he would go about that from his perspective, knowing what he knows with the goal of helping folks out there be more efficient. And then we're going to jump into a really good moose hunting story that I say is one of the, I think, Hall of Fame bulls, if you will, here at OMM, and hear about the week-long pursuit that Tommy had last year on a bull, the Horseshoe Bull that we called him, which is particularly exciting. But we'll jump right into it. Tom, welcome to the podcast, your first time on here, and I'm sure you'll be on it many, many more times. But want to just jump in. We've been meeting all the team members, their background, how they got into the outdoors. Why don't you kind of take us back, how you got into hunting and fishing, little on your background, and kind of how that transitioned into wanting to guide, and kind of what locked you in your interest on moose hunting specifically.
So, luckily for me, I was born and raised in a hunting family. Mm-hmm. My father and grandfather were huge deer hunters when I was a kid. So I credit everything that I know and do to my grandfather and my father teaching me. They've forgotten more about hunting than I'll ever know. So probably started hunting at about 4 years old, as crazy as that sounds, walking behind my father. I can remember breaking sticks and him being very, very upset with me.
Yeah.
Giving me the look.
Yeah.
Some people say I have that look nowadays.
I've had the Tommy look.
You probably have. But by the time I was 15, I was pretty much running the crew and doing all the hunts on my own. And they tell stories about me at 7 and 8 years old with 10, 50-year-old men standing around me listening to me tell deer stories and stuff, So I've been doing this a long time. I went on a couple moose hunts as a young man. My father was lucky enough to have friends get drawn and he was their sub-permittee. The first one we went on, we killed a 57-inch bull. Wow. And we had no idea what we were doing. None. All we did was go up into the woods and drive logging roads, come around a corner, and there was a cow and a calf standing in a bog. The adults in the truck were looking at that, and I happened to look up behind it, and there's the bull standing right behind her. She came across the road. My father shot her in the road. The funny part about that story is we tried to load it into the back of the truck. Again, had no idea. We ran a rope up over a white birch and tried to pull it up, and the white birch broke. And now we got the moose and the white birch laying in the road. Had no equipment at all. Ended up pulling it into the truck in a sand pit up the road about a mile. So
no
you
kidding.
can imagine what that turned out like.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I went on a couple other ones, just riding hunts, and then I started looking into this stuff. And I was working as a mechanic in a shoe factory in Skowhegan, Maine, and 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, I realized that day that it could be the end of my. I could be done tomorrow. You just don't know. I guess the realization of things can happen quickly came into my head, and I decided that day that I was going to become a Maine guide, which I had wanted to do my whole life. And a year later, I was a guide. And when I got my guide's license, I was very dedicated in becoming a guide and getting going. So I downloaded every single Master Maine Guide's name off the Professional Guides Association's list. I put them in a ringed binder, and I called every single one of them. I still have the binder to this day, and every person I talked to, I wrote next to it, no work, or they gave me this name or this number, and I ended up getting hired by a reputable outfitter in Jackman, Maine, and really getting into moose hunting from there on out.
Yeah.
My first hunt, I was hired just to cook and be the cameraman, and I'd never heard a bull before in my life. I didn't even know what it was. The guide on the hunt called, and they started grunting, and he looked at me and he said, "You hear him? You hear him?" And I started laughing. I'm like, "I hear some bullfrogs." And him and the client started laughing, and they're like, "Those are moose." So I had no idea, but that sparked my interest and sparked my career. The following year, I killed the biggest bull I've ever killed in my life, in my career. He was 58.5 inches wide and scored I can't remember, 198 and 3/8 or something stupid like that.
Right out of the gate.
A Boone and Crockett bull right out of the gate.
Wow.
Absolute luck. And my career just blew up from there. But
I got to say, Tom, we talked about luck. And yesterday I saw a thing that said, luck is what happens when preparation and opportunity come together.
I like that.
So,
I like that.
That idea of making your own luck.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of times you make your own luck by hard work.
Yeah.
But perseverance is the biggest thing. I mean, you've got to keep going. That's
right.
all there's to it. So.
Right. And so, thinking about that, getting into guiding and being new and having success right out of the gate, to where you are now, having done this for a number of years. And I know, you do the hunting, you also do fishing, whatever, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned guiding, how you've changed over time?
I think the hardest thing I had to learn was that the customers don't necessarily see the woods the way we do. Mm-hmm. A lot of them they're scared of the woods. They've never been in the woods.
Right.
And if they do go in the woods, they go to a tree stand and they sit there and they get back out of it. When I first started, I'd walk by rubs and scrapes and rut pits and alders racked up and stuff like that. I just assumed everybody knew what that was. And as time passed, I realized that these guys don't even know what that is. So I started pointing that stuff out to them. And I think that was one of the biggest things I needed to learn. And the other thing is just because I'm experienced enough as a hunter to make this shot or do this or do that doesn't mean that the guy behind me is. So you really got to pay attention to your customer and what you're doing and just kind of cater to them and their abilities, because they're not necessarily the hunter or the fisherman or whatever that you are.
Right.
I think that was one of the hardest things I had to learn.
No, that's a great point. And I think, when I think about that too, I think one thing I've learned is how, particularly once you do this commercially, people have a vision of how this will go, like in their mind. Mm-hmm. And that might be very different from ours.
Exactly.
Yep. We were talking about this. I think about the first client I had up here. When I had my pre-client call, this is a direct quote. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I don't really need to shoot a moose all that bad, but not having fun will be unacceptable to me. And so right there.
That's a client I want.
Right.
They're awesome.
But, right there I'm like, okay, I'm going to have, if they're talking a little bit,
you got to let them have fun.
You got to let,
Yeah.
they're more, and he came with a longtime friend and, it was more like their reunion. But I think
Yeah.
that's the big thing is
Yeah.
their goals versus
Yeah. I mean,
ours.
anybody who knows me knows I'm one of the most serious guys when
Yeah.
it comes to moose hunting. I am very serious about my hunting, and I take it that way. But I've had clients, as you well know,
Yeah.
that aren't so serious, and you just have to roll with it. You can't not. They're paying the bill, and they are expecting to have fun and enjoy themselves. And if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do.
Right.
So,
Right. Now, as we jump in, kind of this is entertaining, it's educational, etc. One big thing is scouting, and we kind of talked about how before we got on this a little bit about, I can remember times. I remember hunting Zone 6, coming north, getting here Thursday night, Friday night, jump in the truck, race around, check a couple roads, and that was it.
yep.
That's changed some,
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I've been doing this 20 years, so when I first started, it was pretty easy. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not going to lie. You could go out pretty much anywhere and call, and you'd call a bull and big bulls everywhere. It was unbelievable. I mean, my first 6 were over 50, and I had no idea what I was doing. None.
Right.
So all I knew how to do was a cow call, and that's all I did. And I had no clue what I was doing otherwise. Times have changed. They're no longer like that. You've got to get back. You've got to get off the road. You've got to get in the woods. You've got to really do your scouting, and it takes time. If I had my own permit, I'd probably be in the woods 3 or 4 weeks. 3 or 4 weeks dedicated to finding the bull I'm looking for and finding what he's doing and really locking him down. I'm fortunate enough to have hunted these areas up here a lot.
Right.
So I know, and between that and the game cameras and stuff that I put out and we put out, I can lock it in pretty quick. But if I drew my own permit and say it was in Zone 1, I would spend a lot of time over there looking.
Yeah. So if you're thinking, let's say, imagine you have none of that experience.
Yep.
And right now you got a Zone 1 tag. So maybe you decide, I guess you could hire a guide and do it quickly. But if you're not going to do that, what would be your first steps and recommendations for someone as they're thinking about this? Maybe they live in, another New England state or wherever. What would be your thoughts?
So if you're not here in Maine, which
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of Maine residents obviously get drawn, but they usually know the areas. But to me, if I was going to dedicate some time, I'd try to have at least a week, whether it's 3 weekends or 4 weekends or whatever, at least a week's worth of scouting. The very first thing I do is either pull out a set of maps, old school, or you can go to Onyx or whatever, Google Earth, whatever, and just look at the area you're going to. Okay, I'm going to Zone 1. I'm going to get Zone 1 up on my map, and I'm going to look at it and say, okay, there's a river runs here, there's a boggy area here, there's a whole road system around that boggy area. That's a good spot. I'm going to drop a pin right there. Okay, I'm going to go look at this. So the first weekend, I'm going to go up and I'm going to look at that. But while I'm looking at that, I'm also going to see other things, and I'm going to drop pins and say, okay, next weekend, I'm going to go look at this stuff. So you're up there, say you're up there a month before the season.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not going to be a lot to see. You're not going to see raking. You're not going to see rut pitch. You're not going to see all that stuff. So at that point, I'm looking for what I call a bicycle track. So you find one of them old roads and it's got a single track going up the middle of it, and it feels like you're walking on the surface of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a good place to be because that's all moose tracks. It's a moose trail. They're traveling that road heavily, and if you pay attention, you'll see the old racking. You can see the old rut pits if you know what you're looking for. So you find something like that, you're gonna want to go back and check that closer to the season. And at that point, you're looking for raking, you're looking for rut pits, you're looking for a sign of big bulls being there.
Right.
And if you once you get used to seeing this stuff, you're gonna know the difference between a 30-inch bull and a giant.
Right.
Because the giant's not ripping up small alders; he's breaking alders that are 4 inches around and just tearing them apart. And he digs a rut pit big enough to lay down in and
Right.
lay a Volkswagen in. That's what you're looking for. So, but the biggest thing is to get up there early and find where the moose are, and then go from there. Because now you got places to look. So that's what I would do.
Yeah. No, great point. And I think one thing too, anyone's never done this, and I think this is a big thing. We have I deer hunt, the Moosehead region, and we have a crew that come up every year that are from other states and stuff. And, you sometimes forget when you're up there, people maybe aren't from Maine. They haven't seen moose sign, And so, when you think about like a moose rub or a moose raking, we're not talking the deer rub on one tree that,
No.
It's, what you're looking for is like a patch of alder that are just snapped, destroyed. When you see it, you know it.
I mean, when a big bull puts his head into a patch of alders, he'll rip up 4 to 8 feet
Right.
length of alders and just destroy it.
Right.
And I mean, that right there is like, that's the holy grail. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm setting up there. I'm gonna find that bull because he's big and he's angry and he's looking to play. So
Right.
that's a big deal.
And I think, as you, I think another thing too, one thing I learned, particularly if you're, maybe you have lodging lined up, a hard camp, or if you're going to run a remote camp, another thing too is, all those campsites in the North Maine woods, or if it's any remote area, line that up too,
Yeah. Don't be scared to sleep right there. Get close. It's not a problem. I've more than once woke up in the morning with bulls grunting outside the tent.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
Yep.
I like that. So don't be scared to sleep close. And the one thing I want to say about finding those places, once you find a road like that or an area like that you got a lot of moose, look at your map, find other ways in, because you get up there and it's a messed up week and you got southeast winds and you're set up for a northwest wind, you're in trouble. Which northwest is prevailing wind, for people that don't know that, in the state of Maine. So find other ways in. Okay, that road goes down here and intersects with another one. I can come in this way now too, or I can come over here and come through the woods and get to it. You just got to find different ways, because the one thing you don't want to say is, well, the wind was bad all week, I couldn't hunt that bull.
Right.
Because it's not, there's never any such thing. There's a way to come around the backside somehow or another and come with the wind right. So you don't want that to be a problem.
And, that's such a great point, because, I've heard people say before, like, the moose, they're these big dumb animals. I'll tell you right now, if you do not play the wind right, particularly on a big mature bull, you're going to have a rough time.
Well, I mean, Nathan and Kenny, perfect example last year, working together, calling a bull in. Kenny was standing there watching 4 moose, a small bull, 2 cows and a calf. He's watching the moose. Nathan just happens to look over up a strip, and there goes the big bull bolting wide open out of there. He smelled him.
Yeah.
Kenny didn't even know that bull was there. If Nathan hadn't looked to his right, nobody would have known that bull was there.
Right.
Left silently, but he was running wide open through the moss.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, perfect point.
Example.
Another thing too, I'll share this sidebar story. Last year, we were September. I was on a remote hunt in Zone 4, an area I know you know well, and I had one of these like the pop-up cow decoy, and I had soaked it in cow urine. I mean, soaked it, and had been using that, putting that up and calling and whatever. And I had that in the back of my truck. And I think that it's a testament to the power of scent, use of urine in moose hunting. And it's probably an hour and a half before daylight. And I wake up, I'm woken up in the tent to this bull grunting. And I can hear him, he's circling my pickup truck. It's pitch black out, but just, whoa, whoa. I mean,
walking around the truck,
pacing the truck, and permit holders in the tent with me, and I'm like, hey, hey, you hear that? He goes, is that what I think it is? I'm like, dude, they're right. He's right in camp. And I'm thinking, all right, well, just lay down and be real quiet. Like, what do? You know,
Nothing you can do.
Just lay down and be real quiet. And once the sun starts to come up, we got to get out of here real quiet. Well, you know, so much of this land we're on is commercial timberland.
Yep.
I can still hear this bull grunting. He like was back in the woods now, but he just circling, like looking. And then all of a sudden I can hear the Jake brakes coming of these logging trucks. Yeah. And they come through
over
10 at a time. First one wailing on the horn. I'm like, that bull was probably out on the road. Mm-hmm. And we got up, did a couple calls right there, and it you know, didn't get him, but we did end up getting a different bull. But you're right. I mean,
yeah.
And I think that's part of it too. Being ready all the time.
Yep. You have to be, because like I always say, most guys go from 0 to hero in 3.2 seconds.
Literally.
So you better be ready.
Yeah.
Because it happens fast. And, you know, it's just part of it. You have to, it's like any other hunt. You always got to be ready. Mm-hmm. You know, ready to get it done, ready to do what you got to do to make it happen. So, but scent's 100% key. You've got to have scent. Without scent, you're in trouble.
Right.
So I use it all the time. I've been kicked out of many dining halls because I stunk like moose pee. So.
Yeah. And, you know, another thing that, you know, want to talk about is, you know, as you know, let's say you know your zone, you know, you can start, you know, certainly look at Google Earth, Onyx, whatever satellite imagery. Sometimes I'll look for dugout culverts. You know, if you can walk.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, the best road you can find is a road nobody can drive.
Right.
And when I talk about bicycle tracks and roads like that, those are the roads I'm talking about. You don't want to pick a road that's got gravel on it and they can drive up and down it.
Right.
People are going to ride it all day long. You got to find those roads that nobody can drive and you can get in there. Alders are choked in on it, stuff like that. I don't know how many times I found a road that the alders are choked right in on the end. You push through 50 yards and it opens up and it's an absolutely beautiful road from there on out.
Yeah. Many times. I mean,
those are the roads you want. Like you said, culverts out, whatever, you know, as long as it doesn't say no hunting, men working.
Right.
It's a perfect spot to be because nobody else is coming in.
Right. Right. And I think, you know, get that idea, some areas to scout, make some trips up. If not, get there a few days early. I mean,
absolutely.
We had a hunt a few years ago. My father had gone up like Tuesday, and we had some ideas. And by the time his sons finally got up there, we were running a little behind. He's like, "All right, this is where the moose are." And as you know, that script comes to life during the moose rut. You know, daily, it will change, and I think you have to play that when you find it. You know, if you're driving in a road 10 miles to go hunt a piece, and suddenly you're driving in there Tuesday morning, and halfway in, the road is just smashed. Stop right there.
You don't always have to continue through the script.
Right, that's right.
And I'll tell a story later, and I'll explain this to you because it happened to me last year. But you're right. It changes by the minute, not just daily.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how fast it changes, but especially September because you start out and they're just barely they're in, but they're just getting there. And then the next day, all of a sudden it's a little more. And all of a sudden there's just bulls grunting all over the place and they're chasing cows around. And, you know, so you got to play it. You just got to roll with it. I mean,
right.
That's all there is to it. It changes by the second. So,
right.
Yeah.
Now, you know, obviously, you know, some key tips for scouting. What are some things you'd say to folks that maybe they're new to this, their first time doing it? Big no-nos, things to avoid, you know.
I'm going to touch upon something, and I was taught to do it when I first started, and I learned very quickly that it was a really bad idea. Pre-calling is craziness. If you go out there and you call a bull in, I don't know how many times I've seen it where they call them in 3 or 4 different times. Okay, you're calling a 50-plus inch bull. He's very intelligent. People can think what they want, but they are very smart animals. And you call him in a couple different times, even once. He knows that call. He knows what's going on. He's not coming when it comes time. I went up one time and pre-scouted for the guy I was working for back then, and called a bull in. I got him on camera. I filmed him. He was a monster, beautiful bull. That was the only time I called to him. The other guide went in. He was there it took him 3 days to get that bull to respond. Just as good of a caller as I am.
Yeah.
Knew what he was doing. That bull would not respond. The third day he finally responded and they killed him. But my honest opinion is that bull didn't respond for 3 days because he was spooked by me on Saturday before the hunt by calling him in. That was the day I realized that I wasn't going to pre-call anymore. I don't need to pre-call. You don't need to pre-call. Nobody needs to pre-call. You go in there, you find those alders, you find those rut pits. He's there.
Right.
You don't need to see him. If it's, when you look at that stuff and it's torn up and just crushed, he's big enough. He's the bull you're looking for. Go in there and call him in Monday morning.
Yeah.
Let him come out for the first time. Now he's standing in the road looking at you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing comes to mind for me is, if you're like me and you aren't as worried about the paint on your pickup truck, the team loves me, because if we really need to get a vehicle in somewhere, I'll take mine.
We call for Chris.
Don't drive through those aldered-in roads. Like, let's say you do push through 80, because I've seen that many times as well. We got an aldered-in road, you push in through it, and then you could have a couple miles of perfectly drivable road network that you can work off of, and the moose are out there cruising that. It's a really bad idea, to start bombing your truck in there, particularly like scouting wise, because sometimes you can open it up.
Oh, two reasons. One, you're going to leave tracks and everybody's going to see it and be like, oh, somebody's driving in there. Let's drive in too.
Right.
And that's what you don't want. And then number two, you're also driving in and leaving sign and scent for the moose that are in there, and you're spooking them because they don't hear trucks or see trucks, and all of a sudden there's a truck driving in and out of there. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't drive in like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing too, these are all just suggestions and things we do or have done over the years. I will say the technology, it's a wonderful help, certainly to give you some sense before maybe even been there. That can give you an idea. Okay, this bog is here. Oh wow, that road actually does go all the way into this hillside or what, whatever. You can get that. But you're going to have to put some miles on your boots.
You got to put boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, they're all tools to help, but kind of old fashioned, I guess. Elbow grease, pounding the ground, walking and looking it doesn't replace that.
Yep.
And, maybe you can't, get a ton of time to get up early, try to get a few days and be scouting as you're hunting. You got to try some things. For me, one thing I always talk about is, food source. I grew up, I think, my uncle, I was a really passionate hunter, and he always had a saying. We'd show up to camp, a moose hunt or whatever, and if I'd been scouting or whatever, he'd say, so where are we going? And I'd tell him, he goes, are there any groceries in there? Yeah. Are there any groceries in there?
Exactly.
And so, if you're looking, I'm always looking for, is there leafy growth that's 3.5-ish feet high, 4 feet high?
Yeah.
Whether it be a select cut or a clear cut area. You might not see moose right there right now, but
they're coming.
They're going to be around.
So the key to that is the bulls may not be eating at that time, but the cows are, and they're looking for the cows. So key on the food, you're going to find the cows. You find the cows, you'll find the bulls. Right. So that's the big thing of the groceries for sure. And again, those bicycle track roads usually lead to that, to what you're looking for. So
yeah. And it is interesting as as you start kind of breaking that down, you can almost see it.
Yep.
You know, oh yeah, they like to feed up in here.
Yep.
You know, in the evening, early morning.
And look at this road. It's got 8 beds in it.
Right. They're all bedding in here. And
4 rut pits.
Right.
You know, that tells you something.
Yeah. Well, all these rut pits are right on the back edge of this food source, you know, whatever. And so you can see that all come together. But, you know, if you start seeing, you know, you're going by an area and you're seeing that type of vegetation, pull over, get out, you know, mid-hunt, take a walk through the back side of that. You know, if you got, you know, I think a big thing is use your time.
Absolutely.
Like towards that goal.
Yep. And that, you know, like you said, during the hunt, just because you scouted out 4 roads or 4 places, not necessarily roads, but 4 places, and you've hunted all them and you haven't done anything, doesn't mean you can't go to a new one.
Right.
You know, while you're driving back to camp, keep your eyes open. You might see another area like, whoa, look at that. Well, you got to check that out.
Right.
Check it out. What do you got to lose? You know? I do it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I'm always going to a new road. I'm like, well, this afternoon while it's 80 degrees out, let's go check this road out. Mm-hmm. And we go over and we'll walk that area or walk whatever, check this bog out, check this mountain out, whatever it is, and we go check them. And customers love it. They think it's great. You know, let's go see something different.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Change it up.
Yeah. I mean, and it works.
Change it up for sure. So I think, you know, I want to kind of hear a moose hunting story, Tommy. So, you know, thinking about scouting, and I think this all leads it into this, but I really want to hear the story, and everyone else will enjoy this, of the Horseshoe Bull from last year.
That's quite a story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, I'm going to start it out by saying it's a story of perseverance.
Yeah.
Because this hunt was 6 days. Okay.
Full days.
6 full days. And most clients or guides by Wednesday are ready to pull their hair out. And I don't have any, so I can't do that. But, all right, so the gentleman I took showed up at camp, and, well, we couldn't get in touch. We tried. We both tried multiple times, never did get in touch with each other. He comes to camp. I talked to him. He just got back from Alaska the year before and struck out. Mm-hmm. Spent huge money to go to Alaska and struck out on. He saw 3 bulls. None of them had enough brow tines to be able to be shot.
Oh, no.
And he struck out. So he was pretty bummed out and determined that he was going to kill an Alaskan-size bull moose in the state of Maine. That's a tall order.
Yeah, it is.
Prior to this, I had killed 2 60-inch bulls. One was I call it a scrub bull. He just laid out.
Yeah.
It wasn't an impressive bull. And then the second one was a bull kill and ended up being number 10 in the state all time.
Yeah.
Beautiful bull.
Yep.
But this bull, this hunt here anyways, was a tall order, and I was a little nervous, not going to lie. So Monday morning, we left at, I think, 4 o'clock in the morning to get to our spot because we wanted to make sure we were the first ones there. Got there, obviously had an hour plus to sit in the truck and think about things. So I spent probably a half hour standing out in front of the truck just listening.
Yep.
Heard nothing at all. So got ready. Once it was light enough to shoot, and I say that for a reason because it's happened too many times where we get out of the truck, walk down around the corner, and there's the bull standing in the road, and he runs in the woods, and you never see him again.
And you can't even shoot.
You couldn't shoot because it wasn't time yet. So I always wait until it's light enough, not necessarily shooting time, but light enough to see their sights also. So obviously past shooting time, but light enough to see their sights.
Yep.
We head down the road, start calling. I gave one cow call to start, and then I started just grunting and racking a little bit here and there. We got about halfway in, and a bull lights up to our left, right where we know the big one we're looking for is. I made a mistake. I cow called to him. He grunted back. I racked the brush. He grunted back, started racking. I moved 30 yards back and hit the brush again, and he shut right up and never heard him again. The mistake I made was moving back. I grunted and racked, in one spot, and then I backed up 30 yards and grunted and racked again. And that's not something a bull would do. And he knew something was up, and he left. He was gone. Continued the day. We ended up calling in a little 30-inch bull later. And we ended the day happy. We had a good day. We saw a bull. Mm-hmm. He was excited. Next morning, go back, not to that spot, another spot. Called in 2 30-inch bulls. Had one at 10 feet.
Yeah.
He was tickled. The client was tickled. He thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Having a blast.
Never had one so close, you know.
Yeah.
And I told him a story about a gentleman I took years ago and showed him 13 bulls, and he killed the 14th one, right? And it was Boone and Crockett, my second Boone and Crockett bull ever. So we laughed about it. And he said, well, with my luck, we probably won't see another one. I kind of chuckled. The next day, go back, same area. We called in, I think, 3 bulls that day. All small. Biggest one was like 40 inches. I'm going to fast forward to Friday, because all the way through we call in a bunch of little bulls over and over and over again. We're at like 10 by Friday.
Right.
Okay? Never a bull big enough to shoot.
So the key point to this is, so I had been on that remote hunt. I rolled into camp for breakfast Friday to jump on with the team, and you had told me, you're like, we're seeing bulls everywhere. We're having a great hunt.
Yeah.
You know,
I came downstairs that morning at 3:30 in the morning, and I walked over to make coffee, and I just happened to see somebody. I didn't even know who it was. I look over my shoulder, and Chris is sitting there. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's supposed to be in the North Maine woods in Zone 4. Like, what are you doing here?
I've been in my truck for 4.5 hours to get here just to see you, Tommy.
That's what it was. Yeah, he came just to see me. So anyway, I talked to Chris and told him what was going on, and he kind of lifted my spirits a little, because, you know, we all do that. That's what we do.
Yeah.
He's like, that's awesome.
Dude.
You're doing great. I mean, you're showing the guy all kinds of bulls. What more could you ask for? Right. I said, well, 1 over 50 would be nice.
You'll get there. You're sifting through them, Tommy.
So Friday, it rained pretty hard in the morning. We were driving in, and we saw a giant bull cross the road right in front of us 15 minutes before shooting time. So we pull over, wait. Finally get time, get him out, load the gun, call, nothing at all. That bull was on a mission. So anyway, we hunted the morning, saw another small bull, come out of there, and driving around to go somewhere else, and there's a bull in a cow track in the road, brand new. Just came out, rain just stopped 10 minutes before, they were just there. Get out of the truck, loaded the gun, looking around, I'm following the tracks, and I go in on the left side of the road, and there's nothing there. I'm like, I don't know what happened here. I come back out and kind of sorted some things out, and then right in front of my truck, I look, and there's a brand new kicked up pit on the side of the road. Not a bull pit, but a cow pit. And people are going to go, what? What do you mean a cow pit? For most of my career, I've walked these old roads and these old places and found these little superficial pits, and I always thought it was just a bull kicked his foot once or twice. Yep. It's not. Cows make those pits. Cows do that. They kick it up like that, and then they pee in it, and it brings the bull, arouses the bull. The dirt was dry in the pit. I'm like, now I'm excited.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is raining, so it's kicked up.
This is a slam dunk.
Right.
It's done.
They're right here.
I look, and they turn into the woods right in front of my truck, and they're on the right side of the road. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So we go in, and the first thing I did was let 2 big grunts out. And he started instantly grunting back at me and racking and ripping stuff up. And I looked at my client, and I said, we need to move towards him. And we moved up. I hit the brush. He's coming, and he's coming hard. And we moved again. And when we moved the second time, I hit the brush again. He ripping stuff up, grunting everything. And all of a sudden, I felt a little bit of wind hit the back of my neck. And as soon as it did, all you heard was antlers just go crashing out through the woods.
Running away, yeah.
He was 45 yards from us and smelled us and turned and ran. We couldn't see him. He was in the thick stuff. Had he come 5 more yards, he'd have been standing wide open, and he'd been in the truck.
Right.
So we decided to hunt sit in the spot that evening for a couple hours until dark and call. We didn't see anything. We made a plan that night that we were going to go back to where that big bull was in the morning, and listen. If we could hear him or hear the cow, we were going to work him and try and kill him. The one thing to this is my client's father was also in camp, and he hadn't been able to go with us. And on Saturday morning, he was actually going to go with us. And I told the client, I said, listen, the reason we haven't killed a bull yet is because your dad wasn't with us. He's supposed to be with us. And it was more an upbeat thing for him than anything.
Let's take your old man with us, right?
So he came with us. Driving, we get to that spot where we had the big bull going, and sat there for like 45 minutes, not a sound. I gave a few calls, nothing. I said, well, let's go over to this other place where we've been hunting, and I said, let's just check that out. We'll work that one. So we started that way, and I'm driving along, and I went past a spot that we'd hunted 4 times already this week, and something in my head said, you need to turn around. And I was like, nah, whatever. I just kept driving, and then it just wouldn't let me. Something told me, and I looked at the client, and I said, we got to turn around. We got to go back there. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, something's telling me we got to go back there. And he said, well, it sounds like we better go back there. So we did. Turned around, sat up. Father says, I'm going to sit in the truck. I said, all right, well, we're going to hunt this, and then we'll come back. We hunted down. We saw 3 bulls before we got to the first corner on the old road that we were hunting. 3 small bulls.
On your way in.
On our way in.
Yeah.
We turned that corner, calling, and all of a sudden there's about a 45-inch bull standing in a little strip with a cow. And we're looking at it, and the client's asking me, and I said, look, it's the biggest one we've seen this week. It's Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I don't know. It's up to you. And he clicked the safety off. And right then, the cow turned and ran, and the bull followed her. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's done. And I looked at him, and I said, well, let's get out of here. We'll go somewhere else. And he said, you know what? Let's go just a little bit further. Intuition. I said, all right, let's do it. We work up over the hill. I'm just cresting the hill, and I hear cock smash. I'm like, and the client goes, what was that? I said, that's 2 bulls fighting. Let's go. And I grabbed my shoulder blade, and I put my hands up high, and I started rocking back and forth like a bull would, and I grunted my way in, and they all ran away from me. And I'm like totally blown away. Doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. That bull's supposed to be angry and come to me. Ran away. So they all, now there's moose running everywhere, and we can't tell what's going on.
There's moose everywhere. That sound everywhere.
Everywhere. And I looking, and I see some moose coming out in the cut to the right of us. And I said, come here, I think there's a bull out there. And I stepped over, and I look, and I put my binoculars out, and there wasn't just one bull. They were all out there, and there was 9 or 10 moose in that cut. Had come out into the cut because they were fighting, and when I came in, they all ran out in the cut and stood there. And the big boy was standing right there looking at us. My client shot, and I'm like, you better shoot again.
Yeah, take your time.
And I look over, and his gun's jammed. I looked at him, I said, calm down, get it fixed. And he got it fixed. I said, get over here. And I moved him over. And the key to that whole thing was I was calm.
Yeah.
And you have to be, because if you're not, they're wound up and they can't do it. I got him over there. I lined him up. He put the gun on him and shot, and the bull just turned and ran and disappeared. And my heart's in my throat, and so is his.
Yeah.
So calm down for a minute. Gun on safe. So all right, we're gonna go down. We're gonna look for blood. And I'm standing on a stump, and he goes, he's right there, and he's pointing. And I'm like, what? And I look to my right, and he's laying in a hole, and all you can see is his rack sticking up. Like, you couldn't see the bull at all.
Like, dropped him.
All you could see was his rack. He took 3 bounds and fell in a hole, and just his antlers. I got down there, and I'm looking at it, and I said, boy, that's a nice bull. And he's like, yeah, he's a giant. And I said, yeah, he's about 56, something like that. I was tickled.
Yeah.
He was tickled. I said, you wait here. I said, I want you to reflect on this hunt. I want you to relax and enjoy it. Enjoy that bull. You know, I'll be back. And I like to give them some time, because they need time to kind of get their head around everything that happened. I needed time to get my head around everything that happened.
Right.
Back up to the truck, call the crew.
Tell the father.
He's ecstatic, but he has no idea what we have either.
Right.
Crew shows up. Me, being me, forgot my tape measure, so I have no idea what I have. So one of the crew members shows up, big hug,
It's all man hugs and high
big
fives.
deal
Yeah.
in the road when the father's like, okay, let's go see this bull. So we head down in, and I take the tape measure. I get to the bull, and they're all high-fiving and congratulating, and I stretch that tape measure out, and it's going and going and going and going, and it gets to 65.5 inches. And I hit my knees.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I was totally blown away. I never, ever in my life thought I'd ever see a bull that big, and I never thought I'd ever put a tape measure on one that big.
Right.
It took me 2 or 3 minutes to get up off my knees and actually be able to function again.
Yeah.
And they're all looking at me like,
Is he okay?
You guys don't quite understand what's laying there.
Right.
This thing is a giant.
Yeah.
And, it's the pinnacle of my career for sure. And just, I to be honest, divine intervention.
Yeah.
Anybody can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
Something told me to go back to that spot.
Yeah.
And the crazy part about the whole thing, that was number 14 for the week. 13 bulls passed, 14th bull killed. Third Boone and Crockett bull of my career.
Unbelievable, Tommy. Unbelievable. Like,
it's still, as you can tell,
yeah,
it still breaks me up to even talk about it. 'Cause
yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
No, it is. I mean, and, to have that hunt, 6 days doesn't sound like a ton of time, but when you're hunting hard for 6 straight days, the work, the effort, the preseason prep. I mean, it's August, and we're at a training right now.
We're preparing already. We have been for weeks,
right?
But yeah.
We're going to be scouting, the work that goes into this. And then to have a client who, comes in and goes to Alaska.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pan out, which, moose in Alaska, that's,
that's big.
That's the thing, And so then to come to Maine with the goal of shooting a 60-inch bull. We don't have Yukon moose in Maine.
No, and it's pretty rare to kill a 60-inch bull.
That's very rare, and it's just awesome. It's just you're right. It's a story of perseverance.
That's exactly what it is.
And we talk a lot about attitude.
You gotta be positive all the time. And I tell everybody, when I go into the woods, I go in with 2 things in my mind: the biggest bull in there, and every day's Monday.
Right.
Okay. Saturday morning, I looked at my client and I said, "Well, Monday morning, guys, let's go kill a bull."
Right.
Because it's Monday.
It's a new day.
Every single day is Monday. The one thing I see the most is by Wednesday, the customer or the guide or whoever, the hunter, is like losing their mind. You're only at halftime.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Right.
You just got to keep doing what you're doing and stick to it, and you'll get them. Mm-hmm. But what happens is, and it happens a lot, is by Wednesday they haven't seen a bull yet, or they haven't gotten what they wanted, so they jump in the truck and they start riding the roads.
Racing
and
around.
Next thing you know, a 40-inch bull or a 30-inch bull steps in the road, and they're like, "Well, it's Thursday, might as well kill them." God bless them, they can shoot whatever they want, I don't care.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
If your goal is to kill a trophy bull,
right,
you need to put the time in, and you need to stick to that goal right till the end.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it'll happen. So
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think anyone who checks our social media, and when you see the story of the Horseshoe Bull, this is the actual story to that moose. Just an absolute, alpha peak representation of Eastern Canadian moose.
Absolute giant. If I ever kill one bigger than that, I'll be on here again.
Yeah, I'm going to get you on here again, no matter what,
I'll be
Tommy.
telling these stories for sure. And I want to say, one thing I do want to say is, I don't take credit for that bull.
Yeah.
Okay. This team killed that bull.
Right.
I just happened to be the guy who walked in there and was with the client. But if it wasn't for the rest of the guys that help with the scouting and help with all the different preparation and all that stuff, this would have never happened. So, everybody talks about, oh, Tom killed that big bull. I didn't kill anything. I took a guy hunting, and my team put me in the spot to kill that bull.
Right.
It would have never happened if they hadn't put me there. So I just want to get that out there.
No, for sure. And I mean, Tom is I think normally a man of few words. I'm thrilled to have you on here. But certainly the team aspect, it's essential to success. And so I think take that lesson, any listeners out there, if you're going to do your own hunt, you're doing a DIY thing. And I've said this on multiple podcasts, build that team intentionally.
Absolutely.
You need people who are positive in the face of, adversity, are going to keep the mood light.
Yeah, nothing worse than by Tuesday some guy all mad because it's not going the way you wanted it to.
Right.
And it happens, and you just got to lighten them. That's when you got to step in and lighten them people up because they need to be lightened up because it's not a big deal.
Right.
It's just a hunt.
We talk a lot. There's things you can't control. You can't you can't make moose show up where they want, don't want to go. You can't control the weather.
Nope. The one thing you can control is having a good time.
Yes.
And that's the key to all of it. If you're having fun and you're enjoying it, it'll come together. It's going to come together.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, we're coming up on nearly the 1 hour mark, so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining me today, sharing some knowledge, some lessons for the listeners out there, and for really telling one of, certainly, as I said, we have a hall of bulls, so to speak, series of stories we're going to be telling. And this is number one, the Horseshoe Bull. And we'll be getting into some more of them for sure. So thank you very much, Tommy. And to all the listeners out there, be well. God bless you all. And we'll look forward to you tuning in for the next one. Take care.